Welcome to Aquarium 911, where I help you with your aquarium problems. Today, we're going to be talking about hair algae, because this one's a little different than some of the other hair algae cases we've encountered, and for some of you, this might be the advice you need to fight it. Today's email comes from Ryan. Hey Bentley, thanks for offering to share your knowledge with a more personalized touch. You're welcome. As the subject line implies, I'm very good at growing hair algae. I watched your hair algae and cyanobacteria outbreak, how would I fix it video, but I think my problem has a unique twist. Here's a shared Google sheet I made to track my nutrients and other changes to see how they affect my plants. As you can see, from row 2 on the log tab, my tap water has a high phosphorus content, likely due to our city water being derived from wells in a farming community that uses fertilizers. Fertilizer is going to have a lot of phosphates, and that's going to be great for agriculture, not so great for aquariums. So there's a reasonable likelihood that your suspicion is correct. It is constantly testing at 2 ppm in the tank. As I understand it, phosphorus is hard to remove except by fast-growing plants, but the algae seems to outcompete everyone else. It was in pretty good shape before I had to leave the country for 2 weeks and then have had to deal with a death in the family these last 2 weeks immediately following. First off, my condolences. Anytime there's a loss in the family, it sucks. And traveling sometimes can make taking care of your aquarium a pain. So let's start working on getting you on the right track. Maintenance has been a little lacking due to these issues. Of note, I did implement your Fluval 3.0 lighting schedule settings before I left, so I know that A, these settings are great at growing, and B, it may be a little too aggressive for my setup at this stage. The attached image is after some manual removal with a brush and a 50% water change a week ago. I've tried blacking out the tank and more frequent water changes, but it keeps coming back. I basically stopped fertilizing except using a tablespoon of Seachem Equilibrium to replenish water hardness after water changes for the invertebrates. Aquarium specs below. It's a 60 gallons, so 48 by 13 by 22 high. Current stocking is Dwarf Sagittarius, Cryptocarine, Becketi, Amazon Sword, Bacopa caroliniana, Rotella nangishan, new and struggling. That can be kind of a tough plant sometimes. You'd be surprised how often some of the Rotellas, which we would deem as like easier or fast-growing plants, can actually be really demanding and kind of a pain in the butt. What I found is that because they're a finer leaf plant, they tend to do best with a little CO2 and a good amount of light. Since we're probably dialing that light back a little bit because we're dealing with too much algae and it was a little too aggressive, we're kind of like playing this game where we're almost fighting ourselves for what that one particular plant wants. Fish, 4 neon tetras, 4 guppies, 1 autosingulus, 1 albino bristlenose pleco. Invertebrates, 1 nearite snail, 4 amano shrimp. Fertilizers, 1 tablespoon of Sequin Equilibrium after water changes. Aquarium Co-op Easy Green when I see plants struggling. And then you did kind of follow up and say that, I forgot, Aquarium Co-op root tabs to the ferts as well. Which makes sense with some of the root feeders you have. Having root tabs are going to help you a lot. But I will say, like, looking at pictures, your tank looks great. You're just dealing with a hair algae menace. But when you see it enough, you know how to see past it too. Lighting, Fluval Plant 3.0 using your pro settings and schedule on the new Connect app. Filtration, 2 large course Aquarium Co-op sponge filters. Flow, Aquatop Max Flow MCP1 pump, usually used to mix in equilibrium. Let me know what else you need, and thank you for even taking the time to read this. When we have high phosphates in the water naturally, that can be a real bear. However, there are solutions. One of the things that I've used in the past when I was dealing with some phosphate issues in a couple of tanks is some of those phosphate removing pads. Now, I know part of the problem here is that you're using sponge filters, and normally the easiest way to use those pads is by putting them into some kind of hang on the back filter. It's just cutting out a square, that way it's forcing water to move through them to help remove some of the phosphates. There is kind of an alternative solution to this though. This is going to sound a little weird, but one thing that I would almost encourage you to think about, seasoning your water. This is a weird tactic, but it could work for some of the problems you're dealing with and kind of bring them into a more controlled scenario. One thing that some people will do is they will get like a large tote or something like that to store their water ahead of time. This is often for people that deal with things that are easy to gas off out of their water. And what you can do is basically just have the water sit with air bubbling through it, and it'll gas off some of those extra compounds. Where I would make an alteration is I would try to find something that gives you a little bit of flow, maybe a small power head or something like that, and put some of the phosphate removing pads in the water and let the flow move around so that those phosphate pads can be in contact with the water as it moves through the system. Now, an alternative here is that you could go get a relatively inexpensive power head. There's tons of them on Amazon. Lots of local fish stores probably carry 1 or 2 brands that aren't terribly expensive. And there's kind of an old trick of taking an old water bottle or pop bottle, cutting it, and then plugging it underneath. I know this sounds kind of ghetto, but trust me, so that it has a little cup at the bottom of the power head, and then you would stuff that with like filter floss or something like that for doing water polishing. In our case, we will want to take some of those phosphate removing pads and plug those up in there. Now we're getting forced flow through the phosphate removing pads, and that will help remove some of the excess phosphates out of your water. Now, if you don't want this in your nice looking display tank, this is where you could do this inside of a tote or something like that, and that kind of pre-preps your water, maybe 24 hours or so before, to remove some of those phosphates before you do your water changes. This is not the easiest thing in the world. I will fully admit that to you. There are also some other kind of chemical products that are out there that help deal with phosphates. These might be some of your best options given that you naturally have a high elevated phosphate level in your base water. A kind of alternative option that is like another phosphate remover would be something like Seachem's Phosguard. This is like usually an aluminum oxide basically. It's kind of a powder or a bead. Usually it's more of a bead. And you can put them in a small media bag. That's pretty easy. Like, one of the things that I've seen some people do is they'll go find, like, any given cheap hang-on-the-back filter, go get a used one, right? They'll go get it for, like, what can I find for $10 to $20? And instead of using it as, like, their primary filter, it is just there to move water and hold phosphate remover. You might consider something like that. I don't know if they're like Craigslist, OfferUp, a lot of these places, maybe you got a local fish club where you have people that regularly sell used equipment, whatever it may be. Any kind of option that gives you effectively a container to move water through a phosphate remover might be one of your best weapons in this case if you want to deal with this in a kind of more long-term solution. Because otherwise, the other things that you could look at is like some other natural way of removing phosphorus would be plants, and then you're fighting that slow battle on your own. Like you said, you were gone for a little while, so things got out of control. You couldn't do your normal maintenance. Normal maintenance will slowly win this game, but it is some work. The other alternative you could do is you could look into adding a few extra fish, because you don't really have heavy stocking for a 60-gallon, that are good at eating hair algae. So you could look at things like Florida flagfish. They can get a little aggressive sometimes, which might be not so great for those tetras. Siamese algae eaters will do this. There are a couple of different types of shrimp, considering you already have some invertebrates that are actually surprisingly good at eating hair algae. You just need kind of an army of them. The one that I think of right away is like the Malawa shrimp. They're actually really, really good at eating a lot of algae that most people think shrimp never touch. So there's some good options. I think Dan's Fish has actually done a specific video on different species of fish and invertebrates that are really good at eating hair algae. If I can remember while I'm editing and setting this up, I will link that down below in the description for you. But there are a lot of options. The choice is just kind of which route you want to take. There is the mechanical, chemical way, or we could put in something like Phosguard pads or Phosguard itself, use some extra way to move the water through that media to remove the phosphate through a chemical. Or there is a slightly more natural way where we're actually kind of fighting off this hair algae, steadily getting back into maintenance, maybe adding some extra wildlife in the tank that naturally will help fight off that hair algae with your maintenance. It's kind of which of those two lanes would you prefer to take. In regards to helping the other plant, it might just be a matter of getting things under control to where you can bring the light up, or maybe even adding a small touch of CO2. But if you're not looking to add CO2 to your aquarium, don't stress. Just keep fighting the good fight. Sometimes we have plants that we're going to struggle with. Sometimes we have plants that we do phenomenally well with. That's just the nature of keeping a plant aquarium. I struggle with certain plants. There are plenty of people that have no problems growing Monte Carlo. I cannot grow it to save my freaking soul, it feels like. I can get it good for like 3 months, and it'll even start to propagate a little, and then it just goes downhill fast, because there's like no calcium in my water, and that stupid thing needs so much extra calcium. Little things like that can trip us up. The biggest thing is not to get totally discouraged, and just kind of find where we're having our wins, and pushing more toward those things. So Ryan, I hope that helps you. It gives you a couple of options. The way that I personally would tackle it at first would be something like the phosphate removing pads in a filter, but I always have lots of powered filters around, and you're not using those. So there's kind of some choices to be made there, but like I said, you could go find a used filter somewhere that's pretty cheap, like an old AquaClear or a Whisper or whatever. As long as it moves water, you don't care about it doing any of the other filtration work. You're just there to move water through that phosphate removing media, whether you choose like PhosGuard, the pads, whatever. I'll have a couple of links to help you out, but whichever of those you choose can do this chemically for you. Or we can do the slower, more natural way, bring it back into balance, and kind of deal with it long term, knowing that this is perpetually in our water, and we might not want to keep spending money over and over and over again on like phosphate removing pads or PhosGuard or any of those kind of things. Either is a reasonable solution. It's just the one that you feel is going to be easiest for you. For the rest of you watching, let me know in the comments down below. Have you ever dealt with a phosphate issue, and how did you solve it? Are you like, Bentley, I've never had this problem. I can't get enough phosphate. I run into phosphate deficiencies. I also want to hear in the comments down below from you. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like. And if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. That like, comment, subscribe thing, completely free, just a little engagement, and it tells old Papa YouTube, hey, I like this video. Someone else might too. Do you need my help? Do you need your own Aquarium 911? Down in the description below is the video Let Me Help You, and that will give you all the details that I need and how to contact me, most importantly, in order to help you with your aquarium problems. So, if you need some help, there's a link in the description below that says, Let Me Help You. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.